We're a couple of minutes ahead of schedule, which is great, which means we've got even more time to listen to Mark Barber, our next presenter from Amphibian and Reptile Conservation Trust. So, Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Ant. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Yes, so I'm Mark Barber. I work for Amphibian and Reptile Conservation. I'm currently on our Connecting the Dragons project, which is a National Lottery Heritage Fund project with my colleague Peter Hill.
Mark, could you just turn your camera off and on again? Seems so skewed.
Okay, I think I've got camera issues. Can everyone see me okay?
It's skewed on my view. Do you just want to go with audio for now?
Can people still see me, or is it just?
We can see you, but you're on a diagonal. It's on my view.
I'll try and switch it off a second. Am I still the wrong way?
Yeah, you see you. Yeah. Just go with audio, please, Mark, for now.
Should I switch the camera off?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Right, where did I get to? So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what we're going to talk about, briefly describing who Amphibian and Reptile Conservation are, if you haven't heard of us, talking about our Connecting the Dragons project, and then more specifically looking at the topic that this particular section of the conference is about, biodiversity tracking, and potentially what you can do to help, or maybe if you've got any ideas to help us. So, ARC, so we're a national wildlife charity committed to conserving amphibians and reptiles and saving the disappearing habitats on which they depend. ARC have been around for over 10 years now, but before that we were called the Herpetological Conservation Trust. So herpetology stands for the study of amphibians and reptiles. So that was going from 1989, and even before then, what led to those two organisations were kind of going on in the 60s and 70s as well. One of the main reasons for all that work going on was, and what we were focused on, was on the southern English heaths. So a lot of them were being destroyed in Dorset, Hampshire, and Surrey. So that's why we've got quite a lot of reserves down there, as well as reserves elsewhere around the UK. And those were focusing on some of our rarest species, so the Netherjack toad with the stripe down its back, the smooth snake, our rarest snake species, and then also the sand lizard. So there are two different races of sand lizard. There's the Heathland race, which are like this individual, which is very dark and kind of bottle green sides when the males are in prime breeding condition, compared to the June race sand lizard, which is a much lighter looking animal with the males, when they're in prime breeding condition, have lime green sides. And so they're found on various gene systems across the UK, including in Wales. They were officially extinct and we introduced them. And then also ARC undertake policy, legislation, education and scientific research. So going back to Connecting the Dragons now. So it's a 4-year project and we're just over a year in now. And yeah, so it's all about restoring amphibian and reptile populations and habitats in South Wales with my colleague Pete. To briefly describe the species that are involved in this project. So we've got the common toad and the great crested newt. So this is our work focused around ponds, including pond restoration, creation and management, and undertaking surveys. Then we've got 3 reptile species. So I've already mentioned the sand lizard. So we've got a couple of populations in mid Wales that we're working on to try and improve monitoring and their habitat. The adder, which is classed as a widespread species, but there have been huge declines across Europe in the recent few decades. So it's a species that we're quite concerned about. And so connectivity between their sites, and also specifically on their sites, they're often managed reserves for other wildlife, and quite often there are conflicts between how other habitats and species are managed, and it's detrimental to adders. And then finally the grass snake, which is quite still a relatively common species at the minute, but they rely on rotting piles of vegetation in order to lay their eggs, things like compost heaps and manure heaps, and those are declining across the UK as we tidy things up. So this kind of relates to kind of the topic of this section really, is that during the development of the project we undertook modelling using all of the records from all of the record centres and MBN and all the different monitoring schemes to help understand the best places that we should be undertaking our work to try and focus our efforts, because it's quite easy to spread yourself too thin. So we wanted to make sure we were working in the most important locations, and that's what kind of produced this map. So we've got sand lizards up at the top by themselves above Aberystwyth, and we're doing other work on other species there. The grass snakes broadly across southern Wales. Adders more focused, so with Pembrokeshire and Gower being critical areas, as well as various populations across the south there. And then great crested newts, which is what GCN stands for, and common toads, focusing in on important populations in the Gower, and then various other little points as you head east and then into Monmouthshire. When it comes to the aims of our project, so increased habitat connectivity and critically colony robustness, that's why we're focusing on these particular areas to try and improve the strength of the populations in those areas. Aim 2, create a network of skilled, motivated volunteers and partners undertaking surveying and monitoring now and into the future. So that's really important, and I'll cover a few points on that in a second. And then the third aim, to improve the image and increase understanding of our species. This one mainly relates to the adder. Being a venomous species, they often get a bad press. People think they're aggressive and dangerous. Occasionally people do get bitten, and dogs get bitten as well, and there can be big horrible articles in the national press about them. So they've got quite a bad press. So that's why one of the things that we're doing is working with the University of South Wales graphic communication degree. So we've been working with their students to produce new kind of interesting, exciting materials. So this is an example from Lydia Harris, created this kind of leaflet and pull-up banner and poster that if anyone's interested in any of these, I can get them out to you, especially the leaflets, but also if you've got a site where posters and pull-up banners are suitable, please do get in touch, and we're going to be producing more materials with that, the University of South Wales, over the next 3 years. So moving on to looking at distribution and trends in a bit more detail. So from a recording point of view, basic kind of records going into the local record centres, it looks quite good when you look at a map like this. So this is all of our species, all of the records that have ever gone in on a 10-kilometre square basis. And so, yeah, not many blanks, but obviously this is for everything that we've got. And so when you look at it in a bit more detail, and you zoom into a 1-kilometre resolution for records, then you can start to see that we've still got they're good spread, which is great, but there's still 1-kilometre squares in quite vast areas that we don't even have a common frog or a slow worm record in. So obviously that's not ideal. And then this is looking at current distribution for the past 10 years that we've got for all species. So still lots of gaps to fill, but we've done a really good job. There's a lot more records than there ever were for amphibians and reptiles from the last kind of 8 years, I guess, or more, that we've been doing more focused stuff in Wales. So that's really positive. When you look at one particular species, like the great crested newt, you can see they do have a more limited distribution in Wales, with kind of from Gower heading east across South Wales, then the Marches, and around the North Wales coast to Anglesey. That is their distribution, but there are huge areas where it feels like they should be, but we still don't have the data. So obviously that'll be great to fill those gaps. And then the adder, the other species that we're most concerned about, pretty good focus on certain areas. So we've made a lot of headway in kind of Gower and Pembrokeshire, and also up in North Wales, but we've still got huge gaps where we know they should be, but we really need that information to understand what's going on. and how their populations are changing. And generally, for whales, the best way to get your records is through the local record centre and your Alert Wales app. There are other ways. For garden records, we've got a Garden Dragons campaign that you can send them through a record pool, but whatever system works for you, just get the records into us. When it comes to monitoring and looking at trends, that's kind of a whole other kettle of fish, and something that we have been struggling with in Wales. In North Wales, especially North East, we're doing really well with Great Crested Newt monitoring. There's a lot of work going on there with Matt Ellis and all of his colleagues at the various councils. We're getting really good data in, but elsewhere it hasn't been as good. The kind of national recording scheme that has been running for many years we haven't had as much data as we needed to really fully understand what's going on with our species in Wales. So this is how we're hoping that Connecting the Dragons and other projects and other work will help improve this. So yeah, we need help. So really keen if anyone's interested to get in touch. So in terms of the Connecting Dragons project, we've been running training, and we've been running training for many years. An important tool to move people's skills forward in order to do monitoring, but more is needed beyond training. It's not enough. But before lockdown, we were running face-to-face training with lots of different groups. When lockdown came along, we started improving our online resources. So we've got lots of bite-sized herpetology courses now on our website, which you can get involved with. And we're looking to expand those and do more with those on a regular basis. We've also, within Connecting the Dragons, been running bespoke online courses face-to-face with a more kind of local touch rather than something just for all people or a big public open event. So those have been really successful. So if anyone's interested, they can get involved in them. But really, mentoring is key, and this is something that we haven't done enough in the past. But we need to create these kind of hubs of volunteers in specific local small areas and give people enough skill and confidence to get out there and get involved. So that's been something we've done a little bit of. Obviously, with lockdown, it's been a bit more limited this spring. When it comes to ponds, we're doing better with reptiles, but it seems like our amphibian surveys are the ones we struggle the most with. One of the reasons for this, especially when you look at the NARS, our national monitoring scheme, was often we gave people a 1 kilometre square. They'd have to find the pond, work out if there was a pond within that square, work out who owns it, try and seek permission, that's a lot of barriers in itself. Then you've got the fact you have to go out and do multiple surveys at night with torches, which is really good fun, but for some people that might prove challenging. And then for Great Crested Newts, you also need a license. So that's a bit of a barrier as well, but it shouldn't be a complete barrier, because if you come on some training with us and we've done a bit of mentoring with you, then you can become an accredited agent on our license and maybe work towards getting your own license. And there are also other ways that we can solve these potential other problems. So one of the ways is that over the past 8 years or more now, we've been creating ponds across southern Wales. So I think 2012 to about 2008, I think it was, we dug about 207, created or managed or restored 207 ponds. So this obviously provides us with an opportunity that we already know who owns these sites. And so people can much more easily get involved and get out monitoring sites, because we have the details and permissions already sorted. In terms of Connecting the Dragons, we're going to be creating, restoring and managing another 140 ponds over the course of this project. Last winter, we already created 35 ponds, and we've just started last week creating our next round of ponds. These are all new ponds, which hopefully people can come and help us monitor. And just as a bit of a side note, when it comes to ponds, just showing that they're not just important purely for wildlife and a key habitat in themselves. They're also really, in some cases, and the research is quite early, but in terms of storing carbon, they are apparently really effective ways of storing carbon in the right conditions. So that's another kind of badge that we can stick onto ponds, and nothing to do with this particular paper, but obviously with flood resilience and water storage, ponds are a great resource to have out in the environment. Moving on to adders. So I briefly mentioned these, that they really struggle with the management of sites for other species and habitats is really detrimental to adders. So we're really trying to get out there and engage with landowners and land managers to try and influence the way they undertake work. So we had a really successful event in April where we went out to Pembrokeshire and ran a joint event with lots of different organisations, and we pulled together all the people that work in Pembrokeshire and manage sites to try and influence how we work on those sites. But we still really need the key data, especially like where adder hibernation sites are, because often they can be destroyed with habitat management works. So again, if people are keen to get out on adder sites, let me know. Sand lizards, one of the ways that we're working on two of the only sites that we know of in the kind of the southern half of Wales, but up kind of Borth way, is creating sand patches. So not only is this a great way to improve the habitat, but so there are more places for sand lizards to create their eggs, to lay their eggs and to incubate their eggs. But these focal areas are really handy for surveying. It's really hard to find sand lizards. It's really hard to find them in the dune habitat with the undulating dunes. It's a tricky situation. So by creating these patches, they act as little particular spots that we can send volunteers to try and see whether we can spot the sand lizards. So again, if anyone's at Aberdyfi and Islas Way and wants to get involved, we're trying to set up a local volunteer group up there. Grass snakes, their egg-laying sites, again, not only a really useful conservation tool to help boost populations, having more egg-laying sites around, but also they act as a really good survey tool. It's quite hard, it can be hard to find grass snakes, and so by putting a tarp or a bit of carpet on an egg-laying site, when the females come to lay their eggs in the kind of late spring, early summer, you can catch them. And then you can also see the babies when they hatch out of their eggs in August and September. So I'd really encourage people to create compost heaps and to get in touch if you are creating any egg-laying sites, because we'd like to map them across South Wales. So we're hoping to be releasing our new national recording scheme, should be hopefully at least to a certain extent by the beginning of this spring. We should have a nice, easy online platform and be able to use your phone to submit all the data. So that's still, we're still developing that, but that should be ready soon. So we're keen for people to get involved with that. And so, yeah, really keen for any questions. If anyone's got any ideas on how they think we can potentially work differently or work it in a better way, please let me know. And also, as you can see from this map, if people have got any particular interest in their area, if you're near any of these blobs when it's talking about the ponds and also the adders, then yeah, please do get in touch. Thank you very much.